all of the different areas of life. And it really does feel like he's been speaking wisdom into us. And these principles that we've been looking at, the principles that if everybody on the face of the planet lived them out, then actually, like, it would be Eden, wouldn't it? It'd be back to the beginning. It would be flourishing. And he gives wise parameters for the whole of life that actually he created, so he knows how it works. And so actually, let's listen to him. And given that we spend a vast chunk of our lives working, then it seems fairly reasonable that God's going to give us some wisdom to speak into that vast chunk of our lives that we spend working. And Proverbs does teach us about work, but it also teaches us about the flip side. It teaches us about laziness. Now, if you read through Proverbs, what you'll find is about 1 in 20 verses speaks about work and laziness. That's about 5%. So that's a fair chunk of the number of verses that there are in Proverbs. And some of the pictures that it gives are like they're quite sort of in your face. And it would be really easy just for us to dive straight into these pictures, these images that Proverbs gives us. But actually, I think it's going to be far more beneficial for us to see where work fits in to the big picture of what God is doing in the world. To see kind of what's God's heart for work. What has it always been, and what will it be? And so we're gonna kind of zoom out to look at the big Bible picture, and then we're going to zoom back in to Proverbs to see if we can benefit from some of the wisdom that lies therein. Now, in the beginning. And it's lovely that Proverbs has got stuff about in the beginning. And this is kind of wisdom speaking. Wisdom is telling us that the Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. When he established the heavens, wisdom was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep. When he made firm the skies above and established the fountains of the deep. When he assigned the sea to its limit so that the waters might not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth. Then I was beside him like a master workman, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world and delighting in the children of man. What this tells us is that in the beginning, God, in his wisdom, is there. He's building like the ceiling for the universe, and he's putting down the foundations, and he's marking out the boundaries, and he's doing it all with great wisdom. And it tells us that God's a worker, that God's industrious, and he's creative, and wisdom is right there alongside him as he sets down all of these wise boundary lines. And then if we look at Genesis, what Genesis tells us is that the world was it was wild and waste. It was chaotic. There was no order there. And God then comes, and in his wisdom, he speaks order into that chaos. And he makes things that are beautiful. He makes things that they're good to look at. And God doesn't make those things that are good to look at and good to enjoy for his own benefit. I love the way that Tim Mackie describes this. He says that what God is doing in his work in creation is all about beauty and benefit. He's making things that are beautiful, and he's not doing it for his own good. He's doing it for the benefit of others. And so who is it that he's sharing this with? Well, he's sharing it with these people that he makes in his image. And he says, I'm making these things beautiful. I'm doing it for your benefit. And actually, I want you to share in what I'm doing. I want you to take part in what I'm doing. And so this little pocket of shalom where nothing is missing and nothing is broken, I want you to go and multiply that across the face of the earth. There's all of these raw materials, and I want you to take these raw materials and I want you to make new things. I want you to make things that are wonderful, so that the whole earth is filled with this sense of God's beauty and his peace, and everything being as it should be in its right order. And so, if we get our picture of work from this, we get our sense that work is good, that work is really good, that actually this is something that we're made to do. We're made to participate with God in what he is doing in the world, to make it a habitable and a flourishing and a beautiful place. And we're made to multiply his image. And part of that multiplication of his image is that, he's creative, so we get to be creative as well, and we get to do creative things, and we get to take the raw materials that are in the earth, and we get to he calls it subduing the wild, and taking the wild and making it something that is beautiful and useful. making new things that are not for our benefit, but so that we can benefit others. And so, are we agreed that work is a good thing? Yes, we are. We should be, and if we're not, then have a chat to me afterwards. But the problem is that the fall happens, and people choose not to follow God's way of doing things and God's wisdom. And so what enters in then, instead of becoming people that are participating in what God's doing, they're kind of working against what God is doing. They're working selfishly. It's for themselves. And so this pathway to everything being God-like on the earth is kind of blocked off. And what happens is that the creation tends to move back towards wild and waste. It tends to move back to chaos and disorder. And this is what God says to the man. He says, "Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. And you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground." Work was never meant to be like a miserable drudge. And yet with the fall, that's what happened. And the world continued to make new things, but the new things that the world was making were not nice. It's kind of like nature's barbed wire. My father-in-law decided that he was going to make our back gate bigger. If you've never been through our back gate, then it was about this big. And we only ever had one person that got stuck in it. But he decided that he was going to make it wider. And it was great. But then there was some barbed wire along the top, and it kind of got discarded somewhere. And then it was in the dark in the middle of the night that I was trying to figure out where this barbed wire was. And there were thorns that had grown up around it as well. And I suddenly realized there's very little difference between barbed wire and thorns. And so the world starts to produce its own barbed wire. And it makes work difficult. And it makes it a graft. And do you know what? God could have said at this point, "Oh, do you know what? Earn it by the sweat of your brow and then RIP. Suck it up. You made your bed. Go lie in it." But you know what? We just sang a song, didn't we? This is Amazing Grace. You look at what he's like in his kindness and in his goodness. He pours himself out and he gives himself to people that don't deserve him. And he purposes to redeem and to restore all of creation. And he purposes to redeem and restore the cosmos, the whole universe. He's going to fix it all. He's going to put it all right. He's going to buy it all back. And do you know what? Good news for those of you that work. That includes work. He's buying it all back. And so the God-man comes to deal with sin and all of its consequences. He comes to kind of throw the gear levers of the curse into reverse. And it only struck me this week, what is he wearing on his head as he goes to the cross? Crown of thorns. He is bearing a symbol of the consequences of sin on his head as he goes to the cross, and he defeats sin and death. And so because of this, creation now begins to move in the right direction again. It begins to move back towards this renewal of all things. And do you know what? That means that work is no longer a futile thing. It's no longer a by the sweat of your brow, or at least it doesn't have to be, because he's buying it back. It becomes an opportunity for worship to him. And also, it points towards the kind of God's industrious restoration of all things. And I don't know if you've got this picture, because I certainly had this picture. I've sat in so many Bible studies down the years where people talk about that day, and they're like, it's going to be really boring sat around on a harp playing a cloud. No. Sat on a cloud playing a harp, because the Bible doesn't give us that picture. He's got something far more interesting for us. And we'll get to that later on, okay? So that's your kind of hang on for that. So that's where everything's headed, okay? But in the light of that, let's look at how Proverbs speaks wisdom into us now and into our work now, because this is kind of where Proverbs leads us. We're created to work, not for work. To not work is destructive. And so let's work wisely. Now, the first point is really quick. We're created to work, but not for work. Part of God's good creation in us is that we participate in his work. We participate in the display of his image as creative people. But the thing is, it's part of God's image. It's not what defines us. And so where work becomes the kind of life hoover that sucks in 24/7 and every moment of our lives becomes about work. That's really unhealthy. That's an unhealthy place to be. And do you know what? There are loads of reasons why that happens. But here's just a few. I think one is what we looked at a few weeks back. When we looked at wealth and what we do with our wealth. And Proverbs 23 says this: do not toil to acquire wealth. Be discerning enough to stand against it. When your eyes light on it, it is gone, for suddenly it sprouts wings, flying like an eagle towards heaven. And so that idea of I'm hoarding to get more, actually wealth betrays. And when we work, when we get sucked in just to gain more and more and more and more, that cuts so counter to God's generous wisdom. But then I think sometimes we can also kind of graft in a workplace so that we climb the pole. And actually, right, let me just give you a caveat here. There are lots of caveats this morning, okay? So this is just caveat number one. Promotions are not a bad thing. Because if God's given us the capacity to arrive at a particular position, then it can be for the good and the benefit of others. But actually, if we climb just so that we can exert authority and bully people that are lower down and take pride in a position, that's really bad, because that cuts against God's wisdom in humility and displaying humility. But I think far more common is something like, I must keep going, because if I don't, then I fear that the world will collapse. I fear that everything is resting on my shoulders. And actually, this is a rejection of God's wisdom in the created order. What happened on the seventh day? He rested. Now, did he rest because God needed a nap? Did he need a whiff? No, he didn't. Amongst other things, he's just teaching us something about our relationship to work, that actually rest is really important. When we rest, when we stop, the world doesn't fall apart, everything doesn't collapse. And so it's a lesson in trust. Will we trust him that actually the world doesn't fall apart when we stop? And I think it's also really important to point out that in this whole context of work, in everything that I'm about to say, it is not, and I hope that we've been so clear over these last numbers of weeks, that this isn't about do more, work more, God will love you more. This is about actually, he is freeing us to live as the people that he created us to be, to participate in what he's doing. He's already done the freeing, and so we are now freed into that. Confident of his love and his posture towards us. So if any of you here at this point, right, well, if you do more, God will love you more. I didn't say that, okay? Or I did say it, but only in so much as I was saying that I wasn't saying it, if that makes sense. Now, Proverbs, and the reason why I needed to say that, and I needed to say it really clearly, is because Proverbs speaks far more about the dangers of underwork than it does about overwork. And so to not work is destructive. And we're not talking here about people who, for whatever reason, are actually unable to work, okay? Talking about people who won't. They won't work. They won't use the resources that they have to produce things of beauty and benefit for others. There's a steadfast laziness here. But also, it's not just about paid jobs. It's about using the totality of our lives to bring beauty and benefit. And so this is directed towards people who won't, okay? I hope that's nobody here, okay? But that's not up to me to decide. That's between you and the Holy Spirit. So the portrait that Proverbs gives us when it comes to laziness, it gives us two words: slothful and sluggard. Now, I appreciate, right, that at this point in time, when you talk about slothful, it means full of sloth, full of one of those. I appreciate that at this point in time, sloths have become like cult figures, haven't they? Everybody loves a sloth. You buy cuddly sloths. It's like, oh, sloth. There's even quizzes. Can you spot the difference between a sloth and a pain au chocolat? I challenge you to tell the difference. I mean, look at all those baby pain au chocolats down in the corner there. Aren't they cute? But sloth's not cute. I feel like we've been sucked in here. But the second picture, and actually, before we get to the slug, if you think sloths are cute, move to a country where they've got sloths, right? You have sloths trying to cross the road. They take about 3 weeks to get from there to there. Oh, can we be bothered? No. I need a rest. They don't bring beauty or benefit. Slugs Slugs. How many of you are gardeners? Are slugs your friends? No, they are not. Slugs are kind of snails without a house. They are nasty garden robbers. They come into your garden late at night, gliding into your garden. They glide up onto the things that you have worked so hard to cultivate. They eat holes in your food, and then they leave a snot trail behind them. They're evil. And so you know the fact that the Proverbs is saying lazy people are sloths and sluggards. It's not a nice picture, is it? It's not a nice comparison. And this is what Proverbs says about the sluggard. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. Have you ever dipped all of your teeth in vinegar in one go? Rosie, why? But imagine, the kind of like, oh. And then, has somebody ever blown smoke right in your face? It's like when you sit around a bonfire and no matter where you move, the wind always takes it at you. It's like it knows where you are. It's not nice, is it? That's what it's comparing the sluggard to. They kind of make you recoil. The way of a sluggard is like a hedge of thorns. This laziness is a product of the fall. And actually, you try and walk down a hedge of thorns, ow, 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 ow. It's really unpleasant. But then you think, well, is laziness just about, is it passive? Is it, oh, look at them, they're just not doing anything. They're not doing anyone any harm. Actually, look at that. Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. Laziness runs alongside destruction. And it does that because it's a rejection of the image of God in us, where we were created to participate in making things that were beautiful and beneficial. It's anti-flourishing. You think about, if you've ever shared a house with people, and you live in, well, you don't live in the kitchen, do you? But in the kitchen, the kitchen seems to be the focal point of the most kind of damage that gets done by sloth in a house. They don't wash their dishes after them. What happens is, well, then you say, well, I'm not going to do it. And then it piles up, and then it starts to cultivate its own little ecosystem with mold and goodness knows what else on it. And there's this tending back towards wild waste and chaos. Laziness is anti-flourishing. And the sluggard has always got a good excuse. The sluggard says, there's a lion outside, I shall be killed in the streets. The sluggard says, there's a lion in the road, there's a lion in the streets. I'm going to be killed if I do any work. This work is going to kill me, literally. As a door turns on its hinges, so a sluggard on his bed. Have you ever thought about the way the door hinges work? Do you see door hinges walking down the road? No, you don't. They're fixed in one place. That's what a sluggard does. Wastes their life doing they are doing something, they're just moving from one side to the other. That's it. A sluggard buries his hand in the dish. It wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. If you've ever raised toddlers and you've sat them in their high chair late in the afternoon before bedtime, got a spoon in their hand, and they fall asleep before they can get it to their mouth. Except we're not talking here about a toddler, we're talking about grown-ups. No, I can't. No. And so you see, these are really vivid images, and the sluggard will not be told that their life is leading to a bad place because they're wiser in their own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. Ultimately, this laziness is self-destructive. A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who brings shame. The sluggard does not plow in the autumn. He will seek at harvest and have nothing. You know the way that farmers work, where they do their kind of plowing their furrows and they plant their seeds and then they tend them and then they come back in the season for harvest and there's something there. The sluggard comes expecting there to be something there, but there's nothing there because they didn't put in the work in the first place. And so the implication for this is that the sluggard is a burden to others, that they contribute to chaos in the world, that they offer nothing to share for the benefit of others. And Proverbs even gives like this little song. I wish somebody would put this to music. I don't think we'd ever sing it on a Sunday morning because it'd be quite depressing. The bit in italics there, it's like the chorus for the sluggard. Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? And here's the chorus. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. And then Proverbs 24, I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense, lacking wisdom. And behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. And the ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and I received instruction. Here's the chorus again. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. Oh, write us a tune. I reckon it'd be class. I mean, it would be a very depressing song to sing on a Sunday morning, wouldn't it? The song for the lazy. But the bottom line is that laziness kills. Now, I Googled sloth kills. This was the picture that came up. It looks evil, doesn't it? You wheeze in there. But this is, I know that there's, like, Proverbs is meant to give us a humorous picture of what's going on, but actually this humorous picture is really serious. The desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. Doesn't matter what he wants, they won't do a thing. No, can't make him work. No, sorry, can't do it. And so ultimately this kills. And I think it's important to just say again that we're not talking here about those who can't work, or those who are seeking work and would love work. And that's where God places us in a generous community where we're able to support one another in those situations. Nor are we talking about necessarily just paid employment. We're talking about those who won't. And that's a very different thing. I mean, Steve, it was really interesting a couple of weeks back when you were talking about speech, and you said about low-key grumbling and low-key swearing. I think actually there's low-key sloth as well, because you think about people who've got jobs, and they're paid to work 9 hours a day, and they spend 3 hours a day doom scrolling on Facebook, applying for other jobs, and gossiping about their co-workers. Like, it's equally dishonorable, isn't it? It is dishonorable, and it's destructive. And so actually, what God wants for us is to find his wisdom in living a life that is productive in the way that he's created us to be productive. And so we're taken back to another picture from nature that's going to help us to learn how to work wisely. Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she gathers her bread in summer, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. Look at the ant. The ant is doing what the ant was made to do. Nobody's twisting its little anti-arm behind it. But I don't know if do ants have arms? 6 legs, yeah. Twisting its little anti-leg behind its back. Nobody's forcing the ant to do this. It's just doing what comes naturally. It's doing what it was made to do. And also, she prepares her bread in summer. You picture the ant with a little chef's hat on and a little bowl and a pinny, mixing the ingredients, then kneading and beating back the dough. And I thought, this is surely just a metaphor. Ants don't make bread. Well, who knew? The main food source for red harvester ants usually consists of seeds, which they store in great numbers. The food is first ground to a bread-like consistency using their large jaws, and is then stored in a granary, assuring the colony access to food all year round. Ants make bread, and they don't just make it for themselves, they make it for all the other ants as well. And so ants, who knew, are generous and just. They're putting back what is missing and what is broken. They're making sure that no ant goes without, no ant is left behind. That's why we're told to go to the ant, because this is what they do. They don't do it for their own benefit. They're doing it for everyone else as well. They're making bread for the whole colony. And this is not just about, it's not just about money. It's not just about what we earn. Redeemed work points to God. It points to his industry and his creativity that turns chaos into order, that takes raw resources and makes new things. And I want to give a few examples here, just to show the breadth of this. Oh, we'll skip over that. Let's have a look at the breadth of this, okay? Now, parenting. Parenting is an unpaid job. It is a very long job. There is no point at which it stops. Ask my dad. I called him last year and said, Dad, can you pick me up from work, please? 46 years of age, and Dad is still giving me a lift. The job never ends. Bless him. And yet, you think about, who are you doing that for? You're doing it for the sake of this human that you're raising. And actually, what you want to do is, in God's wisdom, turn out people into the world that are for the benefit of the world, that actually by their presence, they benefit everybody else. Volunteering. Oh my goodness, the amount of volunteering that takes place. Do we do volunteering for cash? Clearly we don't, because then it wouldn't be volunteering, it'd be like paid employment, wouldn't it? But the amount of stuff that goes on here and outside of this place where people give up their hours and their time and their resources just for the benefit of others. And I was thinking about creativity and music. I love the fact that we have people here who can take what for me would be note soup and turn it into melodies and harmonies that lift our souls, that lift our spirits, that can take words and craft lyrics that point us toward God. It's just beautiful. People who labor in physical ways, who take piles of bricks and bags of cement and make things that are structured and orderly. People who pray. People who graft in the work of prayer so that they hear what God is doing and they get on board with it. People who work in friendship. People who sacrificially love for the benefit of the person that they're loving. It is stunning. And then in the middle there, this is some work by a professional artist. I don't know if you're aware of her. She's called Linda Porter, and so Linda Porter, if you've never met her before, she takes images from nature and she takes words and she takes colors and she kind of constructs them together in a way that points people outside of themselves to see that there is something beautiful in the created order. And this is a picture. So there was a courtyard in a hospital. Is it dementia ward, did you say? That's the courtyard that people were looking out at before. It's inspiring, isn't it? Don't you feel your soul lifted by that? No, you don't. It's ugly, it's functional. And yet, because of what Linda's been able to bring in there, the creativity, using the raw materials and the resources that God has put at her disposal, she's made something beautiful. And it lifts people and it takes them outside of themselves. And that's what God does when he gives us the capacity to use our lives and our resources to make things that are beautiful, friendships that are beautiful, prayers that are beautiful, music that's beautiful, paid labor that's beautiful. And there are so many avenues where we get to bring beauty and benefit to the world, where we get to take chaos and make it into order. And for some of you, it's so much easier to see the connection between your daily lives and what God's purpose is in the world than it is for others, because the reality is that we still live in a fallen world. And for so many, work is the kind of the chief source of sadness, graft, and complaint, because there are still thorns. And the reality is that some jobs and situations, they feel kind of humdrum and uninspiring, and we can't see any purpose outside of it other than putting food on the table. Can I encourage you, if that's the case, that's honorable and that is dignified. And so don't dismiss that. But actually, more than that, Jesus sets us free from futility. And it means that every situation, no matter how challenging or difficult, is a potential way to bring beauty and benefit into the world. He's freed us from futility, and he's freed us to worship. I love this, what Paul says to the Colossians: whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you're serving. This isn't about wages that he's offering you. He's not tantalizing you with wages, therefore graft now. Instead, he has given you an inheritance as a reward. The inheritance is certain. And because the inheritance is certain, And because he is good, what it does is it means that we now are freed into working at whatever we do with all our hearts, as though we're working for him and not for human masters. Because the thing is, ultimately, he's the boss, and he's a good one. He is a good boss. Perhaps we turn that into a worship song as well. You're a good, good boss. It's who you are. And so, here's the thing. By the power of his Spirit at work in us, transforming us, redeeming us, making us part of the new creation, the new kingdom, it means that we are empowered. We're empowered to display him, to live humbly, to speak kindly, to live in the righteousness that he gives us, and to do right by other people, to live out his wise generosity, to love well, to do justice, to speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves, to be these small multiplying pockets of shalom, the point to that day when he's coming back, where we get to participate in what he's doing to bring beauty and benefit into the world, relationally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, where we get to hold out the word of life and we get to talk about a king who loves, a king who rescues, a king who redeems, a king who forgives. That's what he opens our lives up to. And we can be confident that because God is a worker who finishes the job, that he's going to finish the job. He's made us. He has made us to participate in something that is beautiful and beneficial, and it is of eternal value and worth. And all the work that we do in our lives now, when we do that work as unto him, he receives it with joy and it counts forever. And in the now, there are still thorns, but his Spirit empowers us to do beautiful work for the benefit of others, all that points towards that day. And that day is not going to be harps and clouds, but neither are they going to be thorns. This is what John says. This is how John describes kind of where all of this goes. I did not see a temple in the city. So this is the reunification of heaven and earth. This is the rejoining of heaven and earth. And in the city, he says, I did not see a temple because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. On no day will its gates ever be shut, for there will be no night there. The glory and honor of the nations will be brought into it. The nations are bringing their splendor and their glory and their honor. The nations are working. The nations are being productive, and they're bringing that productivity before the King. And the whole earth is delightedly united in a work that worships God, that he delights in, and he delights in these people that are participating in what he's doing. And the good news is that we get to start now. And so as we finish this morning, as we finish this part, and as we come to respond in worship, I want to ask, what raw materials has he put in your hands? What situation has he put you in? Because he knows what he's doing. He doesn't make mistakes. He's put you where he's put you. And what has he given you in order to bring beauty and benefit? For those of you that are in situations where you're frustrated by the work that you do, or you're looking for work, or whatever, before we go any further, I want to pray for you. Lord, thank you that you know us, you made us, you formed us, and you know what you formed us for. And so, Lord, I pray for those that are either frustrated by a lack of doing what they believe that you made them to do, or just in situations where they're frustrated. Holy Spirit, I pray that you would come and that you would fill them. I pray that you would give fresh hope, and I pray that you would open doors. And Lord, I pray that you would give fresh confidence to walk in who you've made each one of us, in the situations that you've put us, and that you would show us what you've put in our hands that enables us to do works of beauty that bring benefit, that are for the good of others and for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. And I also want to just ask one more thing. Are there some of you that feel like you're being led into new situations? Because if you feel like you're being led into a new situation, one of the things that's just been kind of sitting on me for the last couple of days is that actually, if you feel like you're being led into a new situation, it feels like you're opening a door. I feel like that's as Mordecai said to his niece Esther, is for such a time as this. And so actually I want to encourage you that if you believe that he's leading you, then step out. Step out. Can we sing? We're gonna start to respond this morning, and we're gonna sing a Christmas song.